Welcome to the Good Talk Podcast, where we remind you of the joy of life, the love of God, and the possibilities that lie ahead.
What was that?
That was terrible, wasn't it?
It's really bad. I can't decide if that was like a train conductor or
I was just trying to, a train conductor? That was supposed to be like my radio announcer voice.
Oh. I feel like it was like, all aboard.
All aboard.
The Polar Express.
Okay, I'll never do it
Anyways,
like that again.
Episode 37. This is week 2 of our Exploring the Enneagram series. Last week, we talked with Ainsley Britain. Y'all got to hear from her. Love her. She's so awesome. Talked through Enneagram types 1 through 3. So if you did not listen to last week's episode 36, go back right now. Listen to that one first because she talks about what the Enneagram is. And then obviously goes into the first 3 types. So you're going to listen to that first. And then obviously this episode is going to be 4 through 6.
Yep. And now you know that we're both 3s.
We are both 3s, which has its own glorious things and challenges. But yeah, we're both 3s. But we're going to talk about this week celebrities
I love
that are numbers 1, 2, and 3. We're just going to talk about those because those are the only ones that you guys have heard Ainsley talk on. So
when they talk about the celebrity, I guess they're not talking about like a role they played in a movie. Like this is their
like
who they are,
people.
even off camera.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So type 1s, which we learned last week, reformers, which are the purposeful, self-controlled, perfectionist, sense of mission.
Yep.
You will not be surprised by these names. C.S. Lewis, who is a phenomenal author, poet. Confucius.
Really? How would they know that?
Well, I think they're typing them.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously,
based on.
But also the Enneagram is really, really, really old. Anyway, this was interesting, and I don't mean to throw in a negative curveball here, but Osama bin Laden.
What was he?
A 1.
A 1.
A reformer, purposeful, perfectionist, sense of mission. Doesn't mean it's a healthy, just like how Ainsley talked about, there's healthy and unhealthy. And it just shows you how some of those characteristics can be applied.
Wow.
Obviously negatively. I
Glad
thought
I'm
that
not
was
a 1.
really interesting.
I'm just kidding.
And then Pope John Paul II, all 1s.
Wow.
Again, reformers.
So you get the idea, the extreme of health and unhealth. What that's crazy.
It's crazy. Number 2s, which are the helpers, which both of us, we think have a wing and 2. I think when we both took it, we both had 2 wings.
Yeah.
Which we don't talk about wings in these podcasts, but if you do more research into the Enneagram, you'll learn a little bit about that. But so the helper is exactly what it sounds like. And these people are not surprising me. Dolly Parton, which is she is such a helper. I mean, think about all the good she does and all the community work she does. I think that's just that's a clear one. Will Smith. And
I just read last night, he has a book that's coming out in November.
I know,
I think
you're
it's called
excited about
just Will. I like him.
I like him in movies. I don't really know him as a person.
I like him even more as a person.
Really? Do you follow him on social media or something?
No. I've just read a lot about him. I've heard some podcasts that he's done recently. He is a real seeker, real seeker. Just a lot of knowledge about transformation and growth. And
you know who else is that is surprising to me? Who? I just started following him on Instagram a month ago. Jim Carrey.
I know.
It's so surprising because he plays these outlandish characters in movies. He was the Grinch, and then he was in Dumb and Dumber, and he kind of always has this larger than life kind of silly personality. But he is a student of spirituality and also just mental health and growth. You should follow him on Instagram if you don't. It's a very interesting follow because he's very.
I just started, as you know, because you got it for me, Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights.
Green Lights.
Oh, it's good. He's a deep thinker too.
He's really good. I got on this weird black hole, dark hole of, actually not a dark hole, but rabbit trail is probably the better word, on YouTube. And I was looking up his keynote speeches. Yeah. He's done some really inspiring things.
And I'm sure you were just looking at Matthew McConaughey because you wanted to hear his wisdom. Not did the Google search read Matthew McConaughey with his shirt off?
No, it did not.
Did it?
No, but he did speak at this college without his shirt. I'm just kidding. He didn't. He for some reason went on this I don't know how long he did it, but he spoke at colleges their commencement speeches.
Yeah.
And they were so deep and impressive, and he has a delivery that's just impressive. Obviously, he's got that iconic voice.
Some people say he's going to run for governor of Texas.
I wouldn't be surprised by that.
That'd be awesome.
All right,
let's keep going.
Number 3, the achiever celebrities. Again, these are not going to be surprising, but it's just so affirming to hear it. Muhammad Ali, Lance Armstrong, Bill Clinton, Tom Cruise, Oprah,
Wow.
Tiger Woods. The achiever, again, is like the perfectionist. That's what we are.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought those were interesting. It's always good to like say, okay, for me, it helps put someone I'm familiar with in with that bucket, so
totally.
you can start to understand the type even deeper. So I don't know. I love learning about these, and 4, 5, and 6 are also really interesting. I learned more about those numbers listening to y'all's conversation, because those actually, I was very unfamiliar with 4, 5s, and 6s. I feel like I 7, 8s, and 9s I knew pretty well because they have very dominant characteristics that are just easier for me to remember. But 4, 5, and 6, I just wasn't as familiar with.
No, yeah, it was very educational. I love the Enneagram. I love what I'm loving through this series
Love what
with
you're loving.
Ainsley. Love what I'm learning is what I meant to say. I can't think because this cat is so loud.
I know. If you guys are following along with us in the past few weeks, he goes crazy when we start talking. Only then. He has been sleeping and quiet and just minding his own until we start recording every week. And
It goes
just
crazy.
drives me nuts.
If there any cat trainers out there, reach out to us.
He's a good cat.
Not really.
Yes, he is. You love him so much.
I do, but not because he's good.
Well, we're training him to change his whole lifestyle. So
Okay, yeah.
That's not on. Anyway. As if you guys couldn't care less about hearing about our cat. No, so Enneagrams type 4, 5, and 6 this week with Ainsley. You guys had another awesome conversation. And again, if you didn't listen to last week's, go back to that. And then next week, we'll finish it up and wrap it up with the remaining 3. So check that out too.
Yep. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Ainsley Britain. All right, Ainsley, I'm so glad that you're back. Another episode of the Good Talk podcast, and you are going to help us further understand the Enneagram. And I think this week we're looking at types 4, 5, and 6. But before we jump into that, I really want to encourage people, if you didn't hear last week's episode, you want to go back and listen to that. Ainsley just kind of sets up what the Enneagram is. We covered types 1, 2, and 3. And if right now you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about, I don't even know what the Enneagram is. It is a just phenomenal. Would you call it a personality test?
Yeah, I would, in the most simple way. Yeah. Self-discovery tool, personality assessment. Sure.
Yeah. When people ask me about it that don't know what it is, I'm a terrible ambassador for the Enneagram because I don't know how to describe it. I'm like, you got to take the test. I'm like, just trust me. You're going to feel like so understood and seen. So for somebody that doesn't know their Enneagram number, you have a great free assessment that they can go through. What's the link to that?
Yeah. So that is on my personal website. It is at ainsleybritain.com/Enneagram. The link's also in my Instagram bio at Ainsley B. So, but the website is Ainsley Britain, AINSLEYBRITAIN.com/Enneagram. That has an assessment. It has, if you're interested in coaching information, if you want to dive deeper into your type, or if you're interested in becoming a coach.
I love it. That's great. All kinds of great information there. So you find out how long does that assessment take, by the way?
I think that it says 40 minutes, but I've taken it a few times, a billion times with other people. And it's usually probably 25 to 30, realistically.
Great. No, that's perfect. So I really want to encourage people to do that because it's so helpful to know as we're kind of describing these different types, what type you are. And I would get, if you're married, I'd get your spouse to take it too, because all of a sudden you'll be like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that didn't make sense that now make sense about how you guys probably interact with each other. So I think that's great. And for you, like, you're an Enneagram coach. So tell me exactly, we didn't really cover that last week. What exactly does an Enneagram coach do?
Yeah. So I essentially guide people through the self-discovery process of the Enneagram through, Zoom calls or coffee dates or whatever. There's like a whole formula, if you will, on the steps, because the Enneagram goes so deep and so far and so wide. But generally speaking, a lot of people come to me with an understanding of the Enneagram. Like they usually kind of know their type. So what ends up happening is that they just come with a list of questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go from session to session with all of their questions and all the things that it brings up. But there is certainly a program we could follow, but more often than not, they're like, well, I'm curious about XYZ. And
Yeah.
I just walk them through all of those things. A lot of it's painful. A lot of it is like, oh, you're not, I don't know if you should know that about me. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not judging. I know a lot about a lot of people, but it's because the Enneagram reveals all.
Yeah, I know it really does. I think we all like to see, and you kind of referenced this last week, but it's like you want to hear those things about you, especially the positive side, the strengths, or you call it growth when you're in kind of that growth pattern. But
Mm-hmm.
along with that, I mean, we all know you're not forever going to be in a growth pattern, right? There are times
Yeah.
in life where you have these seasons where, again, whether it's stress from outside forces or circumstances or whatever. And I think it's important to also know that other side, that kind of darker side of all of our,
Mm-hmm.
the way that we're wired and the way we go about doing things in life. So I think it's been super
Yeah.
helpful. So let's jump in and talk about type 4.
Oh, yeah. So type 4 is our individualist.
Okay.
They are, okay, I'm not supposed to have a favorite type, just like no one's supposed to have a favorite kid, but they're
Right.
my favorite type.
Okay. Type 4.
Yeah. So they're the sensitive, typically withdrawn type. They're very expressive, though, dramatic, a little bit self-absorbed, and temperamental.
Hmm.
Their basic fear is that they have no identity or personal significance. And their basic desire is to find themselves and their significance or to create an identity. So typically, the most creative people are going to be the 4s. I mean,
Yeah.
they are your incredible artists, musicians, because they can get into their feels and create something beautiful from that place. But the painful part is that they feel so misunderstood. They genuinely just feel like there's something wrong with them, or like there's a piece missing from them. And we know there's not, but that is what they feel.
Hmm.
And I think that they're just the most dynamic type because no 4 looks the same, right? That's why they're called the
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
individualist.
That's so funny because, I mean, we live in Nashville. I
Mm,
would guess we got a lot of 4s walking around this town.
a lot of 4s, a lot of 3s.
Yep. Yep.
Definitely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. So let's say we talked last week, I'm a 3, but
Mhm.
I've heard a little bit of myself in both the 2 and the 4. Does that happen a lot, that the numbers on either side of you kind of like you'll see part of yourself in those numbers as well?
Those are called your wings. So
Okay.
yes,
Yep.
that's exactly what you will see. We to briefly overview those, we call the wings the salt and pepper of your personality, right?
Mm.
You can pull from each of those numbers on either side of your main type and have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now, just like salt and pepper, you don't want to pull too much from those because then you'll start to get into the pulling the unhealthy from
Mm.
each.
Okay.
So you don't want to over season your
Yep.
personality. You want to
Yep.
stay true to your main type, but you will absolutely see some of those reflected in your type. And that's where it kind of gets confusing. Honestly, I've had many an identity crisis because I am at core a 2, but have such a strong 3 wing that I get confused sometimes. And you always have to go back to the core motivation and the core desire, the core fear, right? That's what's
Mm.
going to help clear it up for you.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah,
the 4, tell us a little bit about what growth and stress look like for them.
definitely. So in stress, they are going to go to the unhealthy sides of a 2.
Okay.
So they are going to be more manipulative, more uh, they're not going to have the best intentions, right? They'll help you, but why?
Right.
There's a reason behind that. But in growth, they go to the healthiest sides of a 1. So that's when they're going to be able to kind of get everything in line, or maybe be a little bit more organized or principled, and they'll feel more centered whenever
Wow.
they're in that season of growth. Um, so that is the stress and growth of the 4.
Yeah, that's great. I meant to ask you this last time. I've heard some people like be able to use an example of a celebrity with certain types. I don't know if that's something you do or not, or like, can you think of someone that we all may know that's a 4?
Yes. Mainly because I have it pulled up right here.
Perfect.
Yeah, Johnny Depp is a 4. Stevie
Really? I
Nicks
see
is a
that.
4. Let's see who else.
Johnny Depp. Yeah, it makes total sense.
Alanis Morissette. Oh, she's probably quintessential 4.
Yeah.
Dramatic, but extremely creative. Sarah
Uh-huh.
McLachlan, Prince, Bob Dylan. Those kind of people that you think
That's
of for
great.
sure.
Okay. I love it. All right. That's very helpful. All right. So let's talk about the 5 now.
Yeah. Whew. So our 5s are the investigators. Okay. They're more likely going to be introverted, and they're the like intense cerebral type. They're perceptive, innovative, secretive, and usually pretty isolated. Their basic fear is of being useless, helpless, or incapable. And their basic desire is to be capable and competent. They are knowledge seekers. They feel adequate or powerful whenever they have knowledge. So let's say you're at a dinner party, you have a 5. They're going to be the ones that are quiet as a mouse the whole time until you say one thing about something they're interested in, and then they're like off to the races.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so
And
funny.
it's so interesting because they can go so deep into their information. Like they're the kind of people that have what is it, like random information. They just know
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
That's them. That's them.
These are the people you do not want to play Trivial Pursuit with, right?
Yes. Exactly. They like know the history behind why bread has seeds.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, just random stuff.
So random. And let me tell you, a 5 who is into the Enneagram knows more than me, I guarantee. Or they can at
Yeah.
least retain more than me.
That makes total sense. So what's their stress and growth look like?
Oh my gosh. So their stress, they go towards a 7, the unhealthy sides of the 7 whenever they're stressed. So this like orderly, I don't know, kind of person will suddenly become scattered and confused and all over the place. And you can see it on their face. You can really see a 5 in stress. They very much show it because that's not what
Does
they're
that
used
panic
to.
them since they're, so used to having everything and knowing everything? Do they just get in complete like spiral at that point?
Absolutely. And they shut down and they isolate. That's when they're like, nope, I can't do this. They like to work alone, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then their growth is an 8. So they are becoming decisive. They're becoming confident. They are able to show up in their best way. And it's very, very, very cool to see a 5 in growth because you see someone who, kind of shuts themselves off, step into voicing their opinion more. And it's really neat. I love to see that.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So how about the 6?
6. The 6 is the loyalist. Now, I have to say this before we get into 6. If you are a 6, do not harp on the bad stuff that I'm about to say. Focus on the good stuff.
Do 6s tend to do that?
1,000,000,000,000%. That is exactly what they do. They are the committed, security-oriented type. They're engaging and responsible, but they're also really anxious and suspicious. So their basic fear is of being without support and guidance, and their basic desire is to have security and support. Now, when you meet a 6, it's very, very rare that they're going to be your friend right off the bat. So what's hard is for people who are like 2s and 3s who naturally win people over. They're naturally just very charming. When they meet a 6 and the 6 isn't bought into whatever they do, they're like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why don't you like me?
I have totally had that happen. And it's just now clicking with me. Like and you know what? Again, as a 3, I'm like, they're just weird, but they're not. That's they're probably not real super fast to trust, and they're kind of thinking through and processing and kind of sizing me up before they're willing to kind of invite me into that circle, right?
You're exactly right. And they are honestly, they're right to do so. I
Yeah.
mean, they're right to not immediately jump into
Yep.
this friendship where they don't even know this person. I'm like, I trust everybody. I'm like, what's your name? Oh, I'll be a
Yep.
friend. Okay, cool. You know?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just thinking I've been in the process of having to hire some people, and I've always said, and other people have said this about me too. I'm terrible in interviews and hiring people because I like everybody. So I'm like, yep, they're
Mhm,
great. Let's hire them.
mhm.
I'm just thinking like at 6, that's a person you want in that interview room with you because they're looking at it completely different and analyzing it completely different, and they're bringing a piece to the table that I don't have it. And man, there's a lot of wisdom in the way that they kind of process stuff, right?
You are absolutely right. And they are incredible team players.
Mm,
So whenever they are bought into you, the reason that they're so hesitant is because whenever they become your friend or they become, part of your life, they're there forever.
wow.
They are going to stick by you. They are going to have your back. They are incredible friends, incredible people, honestly. So it's almost like, okay, I need to know if you're legit, because if you're not, I don't want to waste my time, but if you
Yeah.
are, I'm about to go into this relationship 100% and give you the best of me. So, yeah, not only do you want them on your team because they will rally your team and they will, gosh, they're just so dependable
Yeah.
too. If you want something done, they're going to get it done for you. They're going to make sure they are looking out for you. So it's always good to have a few 6 friends, but they are going to talk about worst case scenarios. They're going to be like, well, what about this? What about
Mm,
that? What if this happens? What if that happens? Some people, like myself, are like, there's nothing bad ever going to happen.
right.
Nothing bad could ever possibly
Right.
happen. And they're like, you're crazy. You could die if you jump off that cliff. And I'm like,
Yep.
no, the cliff's not that bad, you know?
Right. Right.
So they are really incredible people, and I want to emphasize that because they do cling on to the bad, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times. And there's so much good in them that the more they see that, the more they'll kind of step into their growth, which is the 9. They go towards the healthy parts of the 9 whenever they're in that growth season. So that looks like, trusting themselves a little bit and being okay with what's going on and being at peace and content. So that is that what that growth looks like. It's really like an inner peace. And then the stress is the 3. They go towards the unhealthy side of the 3, where they get more concerned about, what if everything fails, then what?
Right.
I'm doomed. Everything, I can't do it. It can't fail, or else I will be lost with it,
Yep.
because they're really bought into maybe a belief system or their job or whatever, because they are such a team player. Now, like we mentioned last week with the one has that inner committee. The 6 no, sorry, the 1 has the inner critic. The
Right.
6 has an inner committee.
Wow.
So not only do they have one voice, they have multiple voices. They have a lot of different voices. And that's where that what if comes in.
Yeah.
All these what if scenarios come in and pop in like popcorn in their head. So that's really what is happening whenever you're hearing a 6 process things.
Yeah. Would a 6, because they're such loyalists, do they Ha do they tend to have, or are they happiest when they have like 2 or 3 really close friends versus having, 20 kind of surface level friendships? Does that play into their relational dynamics at all?
I think that they have more energy relationally than a lot of people.
Hmm.
So they probably do have a couple deep, it's almost like ripples. They probably have like ripple friendships where it's like a few deep friendships. Then the next kind of ring is deep friendships. The next ring is like acquaintances kind of thing. But
Sure.
they really have a lot of friends because they are such good friends.
Yeah. Yep.
Typically.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh my gosh, you've got my mind spinning. Like I am so recommitted right now to finding out the Enneagram number of all my friends, because I want to just know, like, when you think about, I want to surround myself with people who are helping me grow, and I want to be that kind of person that's helping other people grow. And so just knowing, like, again, how much everybody's got going on in their head, in their mind, and how some people are growing in this way, or some people, this is what happens when they're in stress. I'm like, I want to know that about my friends so I can help them and kind of keep them in that growth lane where they're the best versions of themselves. But if you don't know their number, that's really hard to know when they're in like a growth season, when they're in that stress season. So I'm really committed to just, okay, I got to figure this out and make sure I know the Enneagram numbers of like the most important people in my life.
It really will change everything about your relationships, and it creates that empathy. Like I mentioned before, it creates that like, oh my gosh, I can see when you're hurting, or I can see when you're in a good place, or, there's a lot of people that actually say, oh, well, I'm a whatever, and I don't get along with whatever type.
Yeah.
That's a signal that that you need to, expand.
Yep.
I used to say that about fives. And then let me tell you, I looked up one day and realized some of the closest people to me are fives.
Wow.
So it's really not fair for us to say that, whenever you're in this process of discovering other people around you's type, give everyone a fair shot and give everyone, how you're kind of saying like, oh, I started to think that the 6 is weird. I started to think that too, because I was like, no one's ever not liked me. What's wrong with
Right.
you? But then I'm like, wait, that's actually a really good attribute that I can learn from.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I was kind of joking when I said they're weird, but I think about in life, we do this so often. Like somebody does something, and we're like, what? They're so weird, or they're so, whatever. You throw that stigma on them, but it's really just
Yeah.
because we don't understand them.
We don't get it. Yeah.
Exactly. And this, I think, makes you, I'm not saying it makes you more tolerant of the people around you, but it makes it where and can understand where they're coming from. And so it helps us. I talk a lot about, I'm so tired of looking at people as, oh, those people are good people, those people are bad people. It's not that simple. And there's layers and there's complexities to all of us and why we do the things that we do. And the Enneagram is really helping me begin to understand that and connect those dots. So, Ainsley, thank you. This has been so helpful. I know I'm going to need a lot of help next week, because I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now that I don't like 8s. I just don't. And I don't like them. And so I'm going to really need your help in helping me understand what my issue is with 8s and how I can better serve them.
You got it. We can do it.
All right. This is awesome. Thanks so much. So next week, we're going to cover 7, 8, and 9. And I think it's going to be great. And so we really, really appreciate you just sharing all your wisdom with us and helping us kind of understand more about ourselves and understand more about the people around us.
Absolutely. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.